Indiana just won a national championship with fewer than 10 four-star players, and they are the blueprint for how your team can be the next underdog to win a title.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day, right here on the nation's #1 podcast network, Locked On. I am going to be talking about Game Time today because Game Time is our sponsor. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. This is going to be a fun podcast because it's one that I honestly thought wasn't possible. I didn't think that it would ever even come close to happening. And at the end of the day, I was dead wrong. And it's better for not only myself in college football, but fans everywhere. Because Indiana is the blueprint for how you win a national title without a ton of 4- and 5-star players. Bud Elliott and his blue chip ratio is pretty much something I'm lockstep with. Look at the history of college football. It is very, very important that you go get 4- or 5-star players. The national champions bear it out until Indiana knocked off the Miami Hurricanes last night, 27-21. Like, this is incredible. We're going to be talking about the IU future. We're going to be talking about how their portal helped them get to this point, the culture, the coaching staff, the evaluations, all of that. Portal and familiar players, JMU players to IU mattered. We're going to get into that. But first off, just want to talk about Indiana's national title run. The first team to go 16-0. What do I think of it? What were the key points? Number one is just coaching. Cignetti is one of one. My guy, Spencer McLaughlin, sent me that text when IU was just throttling Oregon, and he was right. And while they didn't throttle Miami, they beat them because they were smarter, because they were more prepared, and because, quite honestly, especially in the first half, they ran circles around Miami's staff, and that's a good staff. All of those things combined, added to an elite quarterback. Again, this is portal evaluations, who, by the way, he was offered a preferred walk-on spot, according to what he said after the game. And he's from Miami Columbus High School, the same school that Mario Cristobal attended. Irony. And he got his opportunity, a little revenge, I guess. I don't know if he holds a big grudge against Miami, but it starts at quarterback. You get the guy that's probably the number one pick in the draft as your leader. Transfers in from Cal. Great eval by Shanahan, by Cignetti, by everybody. Coach Haynes, I'm sure, involved in that. The defense coordinator. Everybody needs to be involved. Quarterback, they hit there. Secondarily, linemen. They went and got Pat Coogan from Notre Dame. The center, he comes down to Indiana. That's a big part of it. Your running back ads like Black, etc. Those guys were tremendous all year. They weren't necessarily high-end guys. So G6 players, that's how Indiana's title run started. And then it's just straightforward. This is something every coaching staff says. But Indiana actually did it. They coach players up to a level that the other guys didn't. If you look at Indiana walking out onto the field, do you think that across the board they look the same part as University of Miami? I don't. And I've had people say that have seen Indiana live this year. I didn't see the Hoosiers play live, so I can't comment directly. But on TV, especially defensively, they don't fit the part like height. Got some 6' to 6'2" guys, D-line. They had an injury to a key defensive player that I thought might derail them in the playoff. They still won the title. They are coached so well. Their run gap fits, minus give Fletcher and the Miami O-line credit. They had the one long run. But by and large, Miami just didn't win the battle, even though they've got several NFL guys up front. Fletcher will eventually be an NFL player. Shamar Brown, like, they've got guys. Receivers block well. They run right at you. They take your will. Indiana, like, they stuffed them in the first half. They barely had 100 yards in the first half. And, like, it's just insane what they were able to do. It really, really is. And for the game and for all the comparisons that you want to have, if you play this game 3 years ago with, different staff, Indiana probably loses by 3 touchdowns. It's just completely different. I don't know what to tell you But like, here, I'll just share my screen for those of you that are watching this live on YouTube. But it's amazing what Indiana was able to do. Let me pull this up here and just put it into perspective of how dominant Indiana was with the coaching staff, with the players, again, that didn't necessarily look the part. Look right here on the screen, the first half stats for the Hoosiers compared to Miami. Miami had 69 yards in the first half with all these NFL players. 69. Indiana had 169. 1.7 yards per carry. Indiana didn't exactly kill it. They only had 2.9. But Indiana was more efficient. They had 116 passing yards. They had one less penalty. And the biggest thing, third downs, Miami was 0 for 6. Indiana was 4 for 7. Coaching. Indiana ran circles around them in the first half. And I'm going to tell you right now, that Miami team has a very good staff. But Haynes, the defense coordinator, like, no doubt about it, will be top of the board next year. The chances of him being at Indiana 2027 are about the chances of me being 7'3". By the way, I'm 5'10", maybe. So they have him for this year and locked in for next year around $3 million. Congrats to Indiana for doing that. That is an unbelievable opportunity that they've taken advantage of. But look, there are only so many different people that you could put into this spot with this roster and even come close to this level. Indiana did it. So give them full credit for that. Now, looking at the stats overall, like there are other areas to look at it, but okay, I hate picking on these guys. Like, this is the quarterback progression chart. And at the end of the day, this is very, very important. Carson Beck obviously throws the pick at the end, but second half, he was pretty good looking at this. He was pretty darn good. I'm not saying that he was perfect by any means, but Mendoza, you look there in that middle area, like he got cold, really cold there for a while. But then when he had to make a few plays plus the run for the touchdown, Mendoza made it. So part of this is clutch too. You can design the plays, players have to execute them. Carson Beck wasn't on the same page with his wide receiver late in the game, and Indiana had not one but two guys that could have picked it. There was some kind of miscommunication there, and that's not a coaching thing, that's a player thing. Player and quarterback were not on the same page. But Indiana won with above the shoulder and between the ears as much as anything in this particular game, and it's the staff with the coaching and the evaluation to make that happen before the game ever took place, before they put on a uniform for the Hoosiers. So congrats to Indiana for doing all of that. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure too many schools could have remotely, with Indiana's roster, won 8 games, let alone 16. This is the greatest accomplishment that I've ever seen in college basketball or football, roster-wise, and to do it going through the teams they did. They beat Penn State, they beat Iowa, they beat Oregon, they beat Ohio State, they beat Alabama, they beat Miami. Like, you know, they beat a really, really good group, and they didn't beat Oregon. They slaughtered Oregon. The way they did it this year was just incredible. So shout out to the Indiana Hoosiers, and they are the reason that when we come back from break, we're going to discuss how many teams need to try to figure this out. And there's a few that are kind of going this route. That is next right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Now that Indiana has won the national title and you're looking forward to next season or maybe an NFL playoff game or to the championships, there's all kinds of things to look forward to, no matter if it's this next weekend or all the way next season, the energy in the stands, everything that goes on with football. It is awesome. But trying to get tickets, the long queues, and everything that goes with it is not the easiest thing to do. That's why Game Time delivers for you, the fan, to give you the opportunity to get a ticket without a raw deal. With Game Time, you'll see your ticket price up front. You can literally, on your phone, type in the game or the event, whatever, soccer, baseball, basketball, football. You can click on that seat once you're into the game that you're interested in, and you can see your seat view from your phone. And then again, price will be the same as it is at the beginning, at the end, and that is very important. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets or any other tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. If you want to take your game to the next level, check out the Everydayer Club All you got to do is click the link down below for more description. But here's the most important thing that you need to know. $5. No ads on any of your audio, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, anything else that you use to get your pods, mine or anything else that you want on the Locked On Podcast Network. We've got everything. $5 a month, or you can pay for the whole year, one shot, $50. Make sure you check that out. And if you are into learning more about football, finding new friends and new people to discuss college football or anything else, again, NHL, NBA, whatever, we have a Discord down in the description below. Click that link. It'll show you everything that's going on and describe in more detail. Check out the Everydayer Club. Now let's talk about the future here. Indiana, like the last 2 seasons, are unbelievable. 13 players came over with Curt Cignetti and his staff, Shanahan and company, from JMU. James Madison players. Now, they had some dudes. Surratt, Fisher, the middle linebacker, being an NFL guy. They had several players come over. But they also had 8 still remaining. So 2 parts here. I want to add something that most people do not. They didn't just take players from a familiar staff. Like, it's like when coaches get hired, who can you bring with you? That's the new thing. Okay, that's cool. But who can you bring with you that has multiple years of eligibility? Just want to put that in the back of your mind because it's vital. If you are not hitting a home run with some of the kids from your former stop, it doesn't matter if it's G6, P4, FCS, whatever, if you are not, it's going to be hard. Installing systems in spring and winning immediately, yeah, that's rough. Because your competition is bringing back the same staff, or at least mostly players know it. Now you got to go play them week 1. That's hard. You got 11 guys trying to do one thing. So Indiana brought 13 players last year from JMU. 8, if I remember correctly, remained on this team. Pons, the cornerback that's so good. He was 5'9". He played with Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, ironically, for Miami, on the same Chaminade Madonna team down in South Florida in high school. He didn't really have a home. JMU was one of his only opportunities. He ended up there, transferred to Indiana. Now he's going to be an NFL player. They coached him up, but he had familiarity. Not only was he good for the team, he could help other players learn their system. That's really important. Make sure that you have guys that can help teach. Here's an example. Eric Morris is going from North Texas to Oklahoma State. He's bringing Drew Mestemaker. Kind of helps. Quarterback. But they also have defensive players. They have roughly 20 guys from North Texas going to Oklahoma State. This is a new recipe. And by the way, I'm not saying Oak State's going to the playoff next year. Who knows? They have over 50 players in the portal. But this is the recipe. If you're going to try to compete with Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, USC, Oregon, Miami, you're probably not going to just go get their D-line recruits. I work with Coastline Stars, part of the Battle 7-on-7 group, and like we've got dudes on dudes across the place and talent. And that's like when I interview the kids, talk to them off the record, it's the same schools. Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas, Texas A&M, LSU. The kids want to go to a very small block of schools. There's 15-ish. So if you're going to win, you got to find a way to beat those kids that have more talent. Familiarity is the first thing. That is the blueprint moving forward. I don't care if you're Minnesota. I don't care if you're Indiana. I don't care if you're Auburn. Alex Golish took several players from USF. Look at Summerall over at UF now. He's got some kids from Tulane that came over. Some kids also, this is the extra little bonus, kids that you recruited out of high school, they go to another school, it doesn't work out. Hey, we've got familiarity. We know each other. Why don't you come over here? I already know what you can do. Eccles was a kid that went to Tennessee. Golish recruited up there. Transferred to USF. Now he's taking him with him to Auburn. Flex tight end, fits his system to a T. Good fit. They already had a relationship. And players, whether it's in the portal or at the high school level, almost always will pick a coach over a school. I know alumni, fans, and everybody else hate that, but that's across the board. Every school is in the same boat with that. So now you have to reestablish at times your roster. Auburn's doing that. Florida's doing that. Indiana's proven they can do that. Who's next? If you're in the chat or if you're listening to this later, you want to post on the YouTube page, here's a question for you. Who is the next team? Maybe it is Oklahoma State. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Auburn that surprises the heck out of everybody, had a losing record or just not really where they needed to be, but they bring in a new coach from somewhere and he brings some guys over. Maybe it's not 20, kind of like Oak State is, but again, Indiana brought 13 from JMU. That was their base. Who's that next team that makes a jump in at least, at bare minimum, gets close to the playoff? Last weekend, they're in the hunt this next season. There's going to be somebody. Indiana is the blueprint for this. Sure, there are obvious teams, Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon. Those 5 will probably be in the playoff, whatever, maybe next year. Okay. That doesn't mean it's everybody, though. Even Alabama, when they came over to the staff that's there currently, they brought some kids from the West Coast. Familiarity matters. And it matters a lot. Now, here's the last part. We're going to get into this after the break. This is one of my favorite things about being a recruiting analyst, being in the 7-on-7 world, and understanding football in general. Evaluations. There is nothing like a live eval. I'm going to talk a little bit about Coastline, a little about how that works and how that transcends into the college transfer portal era, how all of it blends together. And I'm going to use IU again as an example and how you can get not only to the playoff 1 year, but this could keep going for IU. And it, again, will be the blueprint for what your team could do. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Can your team find the right players and the right fits and not just give salesmanship when they're pitching a portal guy? That's really the end-all, be-all. Curt Cignetti's team said, yes, we can do it, and they proved it. Do you think they got some cachet? Go look at their 27 commitment list. They've already got some guys with like Notre Dame offers, SEC offers, committed. Big Ten offers. All of a sudden, these kids, Louisville, Cincinnati, different places where everybody recruits, all of a sudden, they've got those guys committed. So while they're still going to use the portal, and they're the portal kings in terms of true evals, even better than Kiffin because they won the title doing this, I think there's no doubt other schools are going to try to do it, but there's more pressure now too. Hey, it's year 2, man. Indiana won a title in year 2. They don't get 5 stars. Why aren't we doing it? It's good. If you thought it was bad, and it really is, for coaches getting run out of Dodge, well, it's about to get worse. It's about to get worse. Cignetti and his staff, Haynes, Shanahan, all those guys, they have put the timeline at a plateau that I'm not sure is sustainable even for them again. Because, they're going to lose Mendoza, etc. You got to have everything aligned. There's some luck with injuries. Indiana got beat up a little bit, but it wasn't terrible. Like if they'd have lost D'Angelo Ponzo, would they won it? Probably not. If they'd have lost Mendoza, hell no. You need a little luck. But they were coached up. They believed in each other. They bought in. Their run gap fits, their ability to sustain blocks, even receivers, tight ends. They had a tight end score a rushing touchdown. Everybody bought into a team theme. That's the future of football because, again, Georgia doesn't have to really change anything. They don't have to change anything. But teams like Indiana or some mid-level school, it could be Iowa State next. Obviously, Oklahoma State's going through this. Think of any team that is going through a transition this year. USF now. Look who they took, a certain wide receiver coach from Ohio State. You think it's going to be easy for him? No, USF, but Golish took most of the key guys up to Auburn. But Brian Hartline knows how to coach. He's an elite receiver coach, no doubt. NFL player, played for the Bucks. He knows what it looks like. That's a great example. That could be a team that just maybe they're the G6 representative in year 2 or something. Who knows? Maybe year 1. I don't know. That roster will look totally different, though. Did he bring any Ohio State guys over? Did he bring over some guys that he recruited that maybe did go to Ohio State originally, but they're in the portal now? Maybe they want a new shot. Hey, I'll go play for Heartline. I'll bet you money their wide receiver group by the end of year 2 is one we're all talking about. Just going to throw that out there. I'm very safe in that assumption. But most importantly, these are the things you have to do. Relationships are the building blocks. Your coaching staff, guys that get along to a certain degree at least, there are going to be some conflicts. That's inevitable. But can you get guys that are going to work together to bring a group of players together that will buy in to your culture for where you're at, preferably with a lot of local kids. And I'm sure Heartline will love recruiting the greater Tampa to Orlando. I-4 corridor. That's low-hanging fruit. There's so much talent. It's insane. But every school has to find their niche. IU found theirs by going all over the place. And that's just further outside the box. There's nobody ever done this where they recruited this nationally and they took kids from all over G6, a few P4 guys, like Mendoza was a Cal, but you have to find your niche. Are you evaluating it right? Because Indiana, to do that, to get that culture to work, is just unbelievable. Usually you have a little more mesh when you have a new staff in terms of bringing some local guys in. And there are a handful of Indiana players in Ohio, Illinois, et cetera, but the portal guys were from all over the place. Virginia was a key one, DC, Maryland. They had kids from just about every corner of the country, and they made it work. I don't advise that for everybody, but if you want to try it, I mean, Indiana did technically do it, and you're going to be put on that pedestal. So that's something to think about. I got a few comments here in the chat. Let's see what's going on there today. And thank you to everybody that shows up in the chat. So many of you do every day, kind of like Katie. What's going on, Katie? The Jacoby Thomas hit on Mendoza just might be the dirtiest play in college football this season. It was not exactly the friendliest play, but that was weird. Terrible first half, the Hammer. Miami's offense was just atrocious in the first half. And hats off to Indiana, by the way. Number 80 is the real Indiana MVP. Yeah, well, their receiver group is nasty. You can take away Surratt, and they did for the most part. They kind of like tried to take him away, but Charlie Becker was like, screw you guys. Hold my beer. He went out and just made plays. The guy, he's going to be an NFL player. Katie, to all the Miami fans whining, making excuses and saying IU isn't that good, all I have to say is when you're 16-0, you're pretty darn good, not to mention 27-2 over the last 2 seasons. Yeah, that's a fact. The Hammer, I don't care about wins over Rutgers. What's that got to do? UCLA will turn around. They better. Katie, next surprise, John Summerall and UF. Katie, I'm curious, why do you think Summerall? I think he's a really good coach, by the way, but why Summerall? There are a lot of choices here because, like most years, we've got a whole bunch of different people changing. Rich Rod's in year 2. I think that roster will be interesting. I think Virginia Tech with James Franklin will be very interesting. Obviously, Penn State just became Iowa State East. It's going to be the Iowa State Cyclones, Rocco Becht included. There's so many different teams. Why do you think John Summerall? I'm curious as to your take on that. What we got here? New Life. How many JMU players went with Chesney to UCLA? I don't know that total right now off the top of my head. I haven't looked, and it's still not done. Keep it there. I'm glad you brought this up. Here's the deal. The portal was January 2nd through the 16th to enter the portal. Contracts, you're trying to get everything done. Technically, some kids could sit out the spring semester and even sign in the spring. There's to be a few. There won't be very good players, but there are a few kids that will sign today and finish up all their paperwork, and they'll enroll today, tomorrow. There'll be a few. But to that end, it's pretty wild. We're talking about a scenario where if you look at it, most of the major guys are done, and like the Jordan Seaton stuff and all that, they'll figure it out. But for the love of mankind, you're seeing this trend, like I was talking about with Cignetti and different. You need a few guys to help teach the system, to plug and play, somebody that's under the radar, but they know what to do because they know the calls, they know the signals, and they know the players. That matters. Kentucky, that's a great one. Stein and his staff have done a great job of getting players that are SEC level, getting some under the radar guys. I'll talk about Kentucky pretty soon. I think it's kind of cool. Like Kentucky's always been a bottom feeder in the SEC. Let's be honest. They're not a football program. They're a basketball school. I went to a game at Rupp here recently. It's a really neat place. Look, there are only so many places that you can win big consistently because you need a talent pool. Kentucky's not a very good high school football state. You know, there are 10 kids a year maybe can play at UK, and they get like 3 to 5 of them. It's like most states, the in-state school gets roughly half if they're lucky. That's all they got, though. You need 10 plus to win consistently in most SEC schools, so that's going to be interesting. Surratt was unimpressive. They tried to favor him, but they didn't try to force it to him either. That's one of the reasons Indiana wins. Nowakowski and some of the different guys, Charlie Becker, they found different ways in one-on-ones to win. Surratt was dominant against Iowa. He was dominant against Oregon in key drives. Miami did a good job. They got players, and they kind of roll coverage, did some different things. And for whatever reason, Mendoza wasn't as hot last night either. Katie, I picked Summerall because of his history and how much he gets out of less. And all that. I'm not going to argue with you because I think historically, if you look at what's going on with these players at some of these G6 schools, he was at Troy, for those who don't know, before he went to Tulane. He was successful at both stops. He's recruited in Georgia. He's recruited in Alabama. He went to the University of Kentucky. Ironically, we just mentioned him. I believe he's from some of the areas that, like, his recruiting background. Like, he's recruited some of the areas that you just have to if you're UF. And he's already done it. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and, of course, state of Florida. It's a natural fit. And he should be able to get some of the portal guys from those areas too. And his staff has connections. So I agree with Katie. He's one to watch. And here's an interesting one. I don't know if any of you looked at the schedule next year, but Florida, its first SEC game, I believe, is on the Plains headed to Auburn, where many, myself included, thought he would end up before the Florida job didn't end up having Lane Kiffin's name attached to it. And that's when this gets interesting because Golish, who some like myself thought maybe UF might look at because he beat UF in the Swamp last year. He's the one who goes to Auburn. Summerall goes to UF. Now they're going to collide. It's like week 3 or something like that next year. That's a big game. It's a really big game. So I'm curious to see what he does. I'm excited for Florida and Florida fans. They need some good news. I also think Summerall creates great culture. If he didn't, they wouldn't be winning and he wouldn't be the head coach at the University of Florida. Great point. The hammer. Dillingham gets more out of Bowling than Kiffin will get out of Leavitt. Why do you say that? I'm curious about that. By the way, for those you don't know, Bowling was a very highly coveted recruit coming out of the state of Kentucky. Graduated a year early. I don't advise that as a general rule for quarterbacks. There are a few exceptions. But he went to Kentucky, and now Stein is there, different system. But he's an athlete he's got a cannon. He knows what it's like to play Georgia on the road as a quarterback. He's seen a lot. Now he's at Arizona State. Carter Bowley is a player to watch in college football and a player that I'm excited about. Within the next 2 weeks, I'll come out with my rankings, not just who's the best player, but who's going to be the best fit and create the biggest gap, like from where they were last year. I'm going to start with quarterback. Obviously, I guarantee you Bowley will be on that list. Leavitt, though, with Kiffin is also very, very intriguing. With that, I appreciate once again everybody stopping in today. Just want to give another shout out to Indiana. Just an incredible run for the Indiana Hoosiers. They did something that nobody else had. Nobody. They won with a handful of 4-star kids, a plethora of transfer portal guys, a bunch of coaches that had been at like FCS, G6 schools, and came in and took everybody's lunch money at the P4 level. That's the facts right there. Every single guy earned that opportunity and took that lunch money from everybody else. It's incredible. It's one of the greatest runs. And again, like I talked about in the second segment and a little bit in the third segment, the standard has now been set. Haynes, Cignetti, Shanahan, the entire staff at Indiana, back office included, all the way to the secretaries, ADs, everybody. They have set a precedent that when you come to a new school, there's been an exodus of the last staff, you're going to be expected to bring some, not just good players, but the top guys from the other school. It's a touchy subject. And you're also going to be expected to pretty much compete right away, at least for a bowl game year one. Like that'll be bare minimum, even for a school that goes 2-10. Oklahoma State, what they win? 1 game last year? I just did a crossover podcast. It's not, as I do this, that hasn't published yet with Oklahoma State. They got over 50 guys, but they're spending a lot of money. Cody Stovall that runs Locked On Oklahoma State, he said 7 wins is like minimum expectation because how much they spent, how many guys they got coming over. Drew Mestemaker, the stud quarterback from North Texas, came over with Eric Morris, the head coach, and some other key guys. It's a tough deal to deal with in college football, but you're making millions. You got to produce now, and that's just bottom line. So unfortunately, there's not a lot that you can do about that, but it's just the nature of the beast. One last thing here. I think we already mentioned that most likely portal enhanced turnaround. Oak State, all those UNT players in the Big 12 had the best chance to be the next Indy. I agree. I just talked about them, so that's nice timing. Thank you for that. Look, if you don't win by the end of year 2, like it used to be 3-year rule, it could become the 2-year rule. Just saying. So With that, thank you very much for checking out the Portal Podcast. I appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. We will see you again soon right here on the Portal Podcast.